Hey guys, so today for our Ed puzzle, we're going to be beginning our chapter on ancient India. So we're looking at a time period from about 2500 BC to about 535 AD. So a period of about 3,000 years, um, and again covering India. And so our book begins just with this picture of schoolgirls gathering in prayer before a performative dance. And so um, what I want you to do in your Ed puzzle is answer this question, and that is, what are some ways that people today uh, give honor to their religion, or I guess demonstrate their religion in everyday life. So, an example, um, and I don't use this example. I want you to use your own example. But an example would be like when athletes pray before a sporting event, right? So, like, what are some examples of ways that people um, kind of show their religion or honor their religion in everyday life? In the present day. Okay. Um, so let's continue. All right. So first, we come to the geography of ancient India. Um, and I'm looking off to my side just so I have my teacher copy as well. Um, so the geography um, of ancient India, we have this map, right? So just for reference, India is considered part of South Asia. Um, so if you're looking at a bigger map, it's uh, it's south west of China, um, and it would be east of what we consider the Middle East, which is where you would find countries like Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, um, etc. Okay. So, geographically, India has it all. If you were to travel around India, you could climb snow capped mountains, cross wide grassy plains, hack through dense tropical forests, or sail down mighty rivers and skirt around sun scorched deserts. You might travel under a bright blue sky or get soaked by seasonal rains. Okay. And so this gives us a look at the elevation levels in India, right? They talked about snow-capped mountains, but also rivers and forests. So the red, if we zoom in here, the red stuff colored in red, it's going to be higher elevation, so like mountains. Here, up here, of course, we have the Himalayas, and colors like green, yellow are smaller elevations, shorter heights, right? So mountains, rivers, and monsoons. So it says present day India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan make up the large landmass or subcontinent of South Asia. Okay. This diamond shaped landmass was originally an island. However, 40 million years ago, the large moving plates on which the continents lie drove the subcontinent into Asia. As the lands collided, they pushed Earth's crust upward to form the Himalaya 1,500-mile mountain range. The Himalayas are the world's highest mountains. On either side of the Himalayas lie lower mountain ranges, including the Hindu Kush, which separates what was once northwest India from present day Afghanistan. These northern mountains form a natural barrier against invaders. The Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, and Bay of Bengal have provided further protection. The Deccan Plateau, which contains smaller mountain system, makes up much of southern India. The two major rivers of northern India, the Indus and the Ganges, both start in the Himalaya. Like the Tigris and the Euphrates in Mesopotamia, these rivers provide water for irrigation and deposit fertile soil for farming. Right, so just like we see with our other ancient civilizations, these civilizations tend to be built on rivers because they provide such good soil for people to farm, and they give you a water source. Strong seasonal winds called monsoons have been an important element of the subcontinent's climate. These winds bring a dry season in winter. In summer, they bring a wet season with heavy rainfall. Um, so it says physical characteristics of the Indus River Valley offer nearly identical conditions for agriculture. The valley's fertile soil and plentiful water supply most likely encourage nomadic herdsmen to settle there and farm. Villages emerged. Then, around 2500 BC, some villages grew into cities and a civilization developed. And I'm going to stand up so that I can turn my light back on. Okay. So again, just like the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East and Mesopotamia, we have this area of fertile soil as a result of the geographical features, right? So the Indus River Valley um, kind of provides all the natural needs for a farming society. Okay. Next, we come to the Harappan civilization. So it says historians have studied ancient Egyptian civilizations for many centuries, but evidence of India's great civilization was not discovered until the early 20th century. Then in 1921, archaeologists unearthed an Indian culture every bit as vast and sophisticated as that of ancient Egypt. Okay, so I'm not going to read everything here, but what's interesting, I want to focus up here, is that, well, as the definition says, a planned city, right? A city built with a specific layout in mind. So these cities that were a part of this civilization were planned, right? Which was a first in among the first in human history, right? Before that, you kind of just there wasn't much planning to how you set up a city or a village, right? It was if there's water over there, we'll settle down there. Maybe there's a forest that'll keep us cool, so we'll settle over there. But you see here, even though um, these are ruins, right? So we can't quite tell uh, what they would have looked like exactly. We can see stairs over here, and we see like little passageways and alleys that look like what an actual city plan might look like, right? And so these, you would set up a city maybe for defense to keep you protected uh, from outside forces. You might set up a city like this to make trade and movement easier. Um, as it says here, homes had indoor plumbing with a bathroom and a toilet that emptied into underground sewers, which is crazy for this time because back then, really, if you didn't have that, you kind of were living in your own filth, so to speak. No pretty way around it. Um, and so, again, up until the 1920s, people really didn't know much about this civilization. Um, but then fortunately an archaeologist discovered it, and they found um, lots of pottery and jewelry and toys and tools, um, and they show that they found these similar artifacts many miles away from each other, which show that there was kind of a common culture that united these people even as they lived further apart. But as it says here, um, even though it seems like there was probably a government like ruling over all of this, nobody really knows how they managed to do that or what it was like. Um, and then it goes down here to talk about some more things that make this civilization impressive. Um, there was different kinds of writing. They had a very big trade society and trade network traveling as far as what's present day Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. Um, and they've found copper, gold, and ivory. But again, much about this culture and civilization remains a mystery. Um, and so it's one of those things that we'll probably learn more about as time goes by and more people study it. Um, okay. So Aryan migrations. How do we want to go about this? I don't want to have to read all of this. Basically, eventually, famine strikes this civilization, right? One of the rivers starts to change, so there's a lot of geographical change. There's earthquakes and flooding. Um, People don't have as much access to water for farming, and so it makes life there a lot more difficult. And it forces people to move from, if we look at our map, from up around here, like where it says Hindu Kush, they moved from there through the mountains and down into India, into what is now India, right? So they're moving from up north around here down through to India. Okay. And so these migrants are a group of people called Aryans, which means noble one. And they again belong to this group of Indo European people who used to live like up here in central and northern in Central Asia. So they're forced to move because of famine and loss of water, and they move down to the subcontinent of India. Okay. Um, so these people, they were, as the book says, semi-nomadic, which means they moved around a bit. They didn't necessarily settle in one place, and they built very basic houses, and they rode horses and used wheels without chariots. So um, again, not they're not hunter gatherers, but they're also not like settled down. Um, Eventually, as these people move and expand, they begin to develop their own civilization and their own way of doing things. And they end up having this big culture on the people that live in India before them. So it says the Aryans worshipped many gods from nature. They also had gods for friendship and for moral authority. To keep their gods happy, Aryan priests, or Brahmins, performed complicated rituals in Sanskrit, the Aryan language. Their religion came to be called Brahmanism. In time, Brahmanism's rituals and hymns were recorded in sacred texts called the Vedas. The oldest text is the Rig Veda, which contains over 1,000 hymns. Okay, so again, um, this is a religion. Well, this will be a review question. So, what do we call it? If a religion that worships one god is called monotheistic, what do we call a religion that worships more than one god? So, take a minute to answer that. Okay. So eventually, this religion of Brahmanism comes to kind of dictate every part of society, right? The Brahmins are uh, the priests, and they have a lot of power, right? Because they're the ones that are talking, or they present themselves as messengers of God, and so they preached, as the book says here, that the gods granted them the right to rule the kings, and so the kings kind of made the Brahmins very powerful, and eventually a social class develops. Um, so I want you to take a guess, and I know it's tempting to maybe look it up online, but I'm more just interested in what you know right now. So take a guess on Edpuzzle. What does a social class mean? Okay, so it says over time, a social class system developed that determined how people lived. Priests were at the top, followed by warriors and nobles. Freemen, farmers, and traders were third, and at the bottom were slaves, laborers, and artisans. And remember, artisans are people that like make stuff. They're craftspeople. Non-Aryans made up most of the lower class. Many centuries later, another group developed that was considered even lower. So again, a social class is basically when people are broken down in category based on the position that they hold in society. So in this system, the priests were the most powerful, then the warriors were the most powerful, then you had farmers and traders, and down at the bottom you had slaves, laborers, and artisans. Um, so again, in a class-based society, these people would have different rights and they would be treated in different ways based on their position or their job. And so this ends up developing into a rigid, what's called a caste system. Um, and the caste system is hereditary, right? So it's passed down through your family and it could never change, right? So if your parents are slaves, then you're going to be a slave. If your parents are artisans and they make like pottery, that's what you're going to do. If your parents are priests, then you're in good shape, right? You're gonna have a good education, a good job. Um, and again, this is all determined just based on who your parents are and what family you're born into. And as it says here, people's caste dictated the kind of work they did and who they could marry. It even dictated what people could eat. Okay. So, um, again, to sort of recap, we kind of end up with this situation, right? So, to look at our map again, around 1500 BC, people this kingdom here called Harappa begins to break up as a result of famine and drought and all of that. And so people begin to spread out and they begin to move throughout the subcontinent of India, right? And as they do so, they bring their culture along with them. And it's a culture that really favors the priests, and it's a culture that's very class based. And so through that, you begin with the development of this caste system. And the caste system is, again, it's a system um, where your rights and your social status and what job you can get and who you can marry is based entirely on what family you're born into and what job or position that family has. Um, and that leads to uh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression by the top classes over the bottom classes. Um, we won't. This is history, so we're not going to get so much into modern day uh, caste systems. But um, in India, kind of the lowest position that you could have was the sewer cleaners, right? Which is like, I don't want to gross anyone out, so we won't get into detail. But um, if you were born to somebody whose job it was to clean the sewers and to clean up the human waste, that's what you were going to be. There was and it was almost impossible to try to break free from that. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah, because I wanted to save this for the next class. So I'm going to stop sharing. Um, and in your ed puzzle, um, I'd like you to go back to this map right here. So I'll pause it here and just explain what that map means. Okay. Like what does that map tell us? All right.